From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Tuesday, April 28th, 2015. Silver is trading at $16.58 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,206 per ounce. And according to BitcoinAverage.com, the average price of Bitcoin is $226. Antiwar.com reports during the brief summer Israeli war against the Gaza Strip, Israeli forces repeatedly attacked UN facilities, particularly schools that they knew for a fact were full of displaced civilians. The UN inquiry expressed dismay at the Israeli strikes, noting they killed 44 Palestinian civilians and wounded 227 others in attacks on emergency shelters. Israel has defended the attacks, insisting that other closed schools were being used to hide weapons. Oddly, those sites don't appear to have been attacked, and Israel instead hit UN sites that they knew were loaded down with civilians that had just days prior been ordered out of their homes by the Israeli military. Pentagon lawyers issued their own report, and while they insisted they weren't judging specific incidents, they did praise the Israeli military, insisting that the decisions on targets to strike were largely in line with what the U.S. military would have done under the same circumstances. The killings loom large in a potential ICC investigation into Israeli war crimes against civilians in the occupied territories and reflect the continued efforts by the U.S. to keep Israel immune from any consequences for their actions. In Survivor Max by Davi Barker, 11-year-old Max must survive the zombie apocalypse alone in New Hampshire. Slow-moving and non-thinking, the lame brains swarm his home searching for living flesh. Max must apply his Porcupine Freedom Scouts training to plan his escape, but first he must prove that he's too smart to die. Look for Survivor Max on Facebook and Amazon, or read Chapter 1 free at survivormax.com. UPI reports Maryland Governor Larry Hogan declared a state of emergency Monday and deployed the National Guard in response to violent clashes between police and rioters. Demonstrators in Baltimore turned violent after the funeral of Freddie Gray, who died after suffering a broken spine while in police custody. Protesters appeared to hurl items at police, and authorities used pepper spray to try to disperse the crowd. Hogan said the looting and acts of violence in Baltimore will not be tolerated. He added in a statement, "I strongly condemn the actions of the offenders who are engaged in direct attacks against innocent civilians, businesses, and law enforcement officers. There is a significant difference between protesting and violence, and those committing these acts will be prosecuted under the fullest extent of the law." At a news conference held by Baltimore officials Monday evening, Police Colonel Daryl D'Souza said 15 officers were injured, 2 of them remain hospitalized. CNN reports one of its photographers was also injured and transported to a hospital. There is no report on the number of protesters injured by police. For over 35 years, Robertson Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They also take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and permanently removed the minimum purchase order for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Robertson Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on investing and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 850-478-5270 or online at rrbi.co. Reuters reports a day before the U.S. Supreme Court hears landmark arguments on whether the Constitution provides a right to same-sex marriage, activists on both sides of the contentious social issue converged on the White Marble Courthouse to voice their views. Anti-gay rights activists rallied in front of the courthouse steps condemning same-sex marriage, while a line snaked around the block of people, many displaying gay rights messages, hoping to snag one of the limited number of seats available in the courtroom for Tuesday's 2.5-hour oral arguments. The 9 justices will be hearing arguments concerning same-sex marriage restrictions imposed in Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee, 4 of the 13 states that still outlaw such marriages. The ruling, due by the end of June, will determine whether same-sex marriage will be legal nationwide. At a small Monday morning rally, opponents of same-sex marriage railed against judges who have struck down state same-sex marriage bans. Tuesday's arguments will be divided into 2 parts. The first, set for 90 minutes, is on whether the Constitution's guarantee of due process and equal protection under the law means states must allow same-sex couples to marry. The second part, scheduled for an hour, concerns whether states must recognize same-sex marriages that take place out of state. This has been FPP Radio News, online at fppradio.com.